Hey, welcome to another edition of Influence Today with Chet, Tart, and Terry Lyles. Influence Today is a show about what really influences you. And today we're talking about media. And I guess no matter where you go, there's media everywhere, and it does influence you. But I have to tell you a story about our guest before we get started. I'm a big believer in observation, watching people. And imagine I talk about discipline and how important discipline is. And I got to tell you, when I first met Danny, I met him at the gym, and this guy worked out early in the morning all the time. And I remember finding out where he worked, and we met accidentally. And I'm saying to myself, I would hire somebody like that who's that disciplined to get up, take care of himself, get ready, and go to work in the morning. And actually, I went to your general manager, Danny, and I said, "You are lucky to have somebody like that in your team. Imagine somebody that disciplined who gets up and takes care of himself and works out, because I do believe discipline equals freedom." So I want to welcome our guest, Danny Hastaba. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate that. You
Thank
run a
you. Thank you,
very,
Chet.
very successful television sales team, and thanks for being with us. And we really like to get into a couple of topics. One of the topics we talk about is about teams. And I know you're built a team. And so if I could step back a second and talk about how you got involved with this position
Mhm.
and your mindset about building a great high performance sales team.
Yeah, no, well, Terry and Chet, thanks for having me. Chet, that was a very nice welcome. You sure know how to make a boy feel special. But no, listen, Chet, I just a buzz the tower view of how I got where I am. It's as simple as my dad was in the business. My dad was in research for WABC and Blair Television in New York. He got his first sales job as a media consultant, account executive in New Orleans. He got into sales management in Dallas and Houston, Texas. He was the senior vice president, general manager of country music television, and that's what took us to Nashville for a bunch of years, and then just kind of stayed in the business. So my summers in high school were taking burgers to his office and sitting in the corner and watching how he interacted with his team and his clients, and it's kind of something I knew I always wanted to do. So fast forward. Broke my nose, did a year in radio sales, Chet. I did not have the same moxie that you did as a radio sales professional. I honestly wasn't very good at it. But I knew that if I just kind of kept my head down and kept taking swings, the end goal was to work at a television station. My dad was smart enough to guide me that they really don't, at that point in the early 2000s, didn't really hire kids right out of college. You needed to have something. So hung in there and then started working for WAT in Knoxville, Tennessee. Did that for 4.5 years and then had the good fortune of linking up with Hearst Television and WPBF when my now wife and I decided to make the move down to South Florida. So it's been a very, very fun journey. This company I have the pleasure of working for is amazing. Worked as a salesperson at WPBF for 2 years, was the national sales manager for 3 years, and then I've been the local sales manager since fourth quarter of 2017. And then as of 2024, really honored and very, very grateful to have the opportunity now to be the director of our sales account associate program, which is Hearst Television's kind of early career recruitment path. So I am the director and oversee that program for our entire group. And then I also do some stuff in sales, Gen AI and Chat GPT for our group as well. So it's been a fun journey, but just appreciative to have the conversation about leadership and team building here with you.
Congratulations on
Yeah.
the promotion. You deserve it. I said discipline is the key. Hey, so you just talked about something really important. Let's go back to when you build a team, it's about hiring and growing people.
Yep.
What are you looking for when you are looking to hire somebody in the field, especially today? And are people going into the media field in sales?
Yeah, Chet, it's a great question. Look, I think they need a little bit more romancing to the idea. Not a lot of people that we talk to on college campuses and at career stuff really know that this is a viable and lucrative and interesting career path, whether it be radio or television or any of the other kind of more traditional things. They think it's just all social media now. But really, Chet, the two indicators that are always high on my radar are drive and curiosity. I've always been of the mindset that I can teach you how to read a ratings book. I can teach you how to put together a sales presentation. I cannot teach you to make 50 phone calls to try to set new meetings with potential clients, be told no 95% of the time, but then want to go make 25 more because that next phone call could be an ever-growing relationship that helps that client and makes you commission. So I can't teach you drive, and that discipline is a word you've used a lot so far, Chet. I can't teach that. And then I can't teach you how to want to be explorative and curious about all these different sectors and categories of business because sales has very quickly morphed into active listening, great question asking, and competency. You have such a limited window when you first talk to somebody from a sales perspective, especially in marketing, because marketing is not, nobody wakes up and says, I got to buy advertising today. So you got to very quickly establish that you know what the heck you're doing. So competency, and that competency is driven by curiosity. I mean, do you know how many categories of business are affected by tariffs and how? Like, you got to go read that stuff. I can't force you to do that. So drive and curiosity are huge for me when I'm looking to hire at any level. And Devin, my boss, is looking to hire at any level.
Yeah,
Terry.
I consider that like the hustle, like, you hire people with hustle. I mean, you can't teach hustle.
Yeah.
Fast feet, good eyes, you got to be alert. You know what I'm saying? So like that hustle thing is very important. And then one of the things I would like to get into is the accountability,
Yeah.
because I do a lot of coaching like Chet does every day, psychologically from the stress side of keeping people accountable to how do you manage your performance? How do you manage your team performance? How do you lead your organization as a CEO or a CFO? How do you manage your books? But it comes down to accountability. It's such a huge factor that Chet and I talk about a lot on these
Yeah.
programs is how do you keep them accountable to themselves, not just to you? Like they could check a box and say, hey, I did it. I'm good.
Yeah.
Check the box. I made 50 calls. Okay, you made 50 calls. What happened? You make 50 calls every day and nothing ever happens. At some point, are you really calling people or are you just ringing a phone?
Yeah, Terry, a couple things go through my mind when you start talking about those things. I mean, to me, from an accountability standpoint, there's this ode versus gratitude struggle between employees and team building, especially with sales talent because they are so a personality and look, I am a salesperson, so it's a lot of me, I. So I think that balance between leadership management and employees is important to try to thread the needle on. And then I also think that the leaders have to look at themselves in the mirror as part of the equation to the accountability and the performance of their teams. Because I've always said that while I'm only a local sales manager, I'm a CEO, but it stands for Chief Energy Officer. The way I walk in the building every
Mm.
day sets the tone for my team. And if I'm low or in a bad mood, everybody's going to be grumpy or everybody's going to take advantage of the fact that so you got to set the tone and Chet, again, to bring it back to discipline. I want that to permeate and I want other people to catch that. I don't, it's not done for the vanity or anything like that. It's done because that's how I'm wired. And I want other people to kind of use those behaviors or model those behaviors. So you got to look at it that way. And then I think, Terry, again, another kind of warring faction is do you inspect the input or do you inspect the outcome? And depending on experience level and then performance where they are right there, you're going to have to choose which way to go and where to spend your time. You mentioned the 50 phone calls things. It's like, okay, well, you made we're inspecting outcome at that point. You made 50 calls, you didn't get a meeting. That's outcome management. But if we inspect the input, well, what are you saying? Well, how are you saying that? Well, hey, next time try this. And then that's where you kind of get into the coaching mechanisms of it all. But again, it's on the leader. And some people like to and run towards that fire of wanting to spend time and do those types of things. And others want to gravitate to the things that keep them busy as a manager and kind of just get to the end of the day and move on to the next one. So it's interesting. And it's something that I always try to hold myself accountable to on a week by week basis. Like,
Yeah.
Was I a little too transactional, or did I really have a good week kind of in it collaborating with my team?
I'll flip it back to Chet. That's a great answer because I think so many times we forget that there's a front end and a back end, and that's
Yeah.
what accountability is. I mean, the word accountability, account a ability. I have the ability to show my accounting of what I did. Is it in the black column? Is it in the red column? It's really I love etymology. You know what I mean? And it's really simple when you break a word down. It's like, or did you take an account with the ability you had that I gave you, or do you need more coaching to
Yeah.
help put in? So last thing I'll say on that is, I do race car training with drivers. So I'm a human engineer uh, doing mind body things of fast. But the best way to make a race car or a plane go fast is you need big intake of fuel and a big exhaust to get it out as quickly as possible.
Hmm.
So it's the pass through.
Yeah.
So I think it's really incredible that leadership sometimes, as Chet and I talk about, is sometimes just looking at one or the other, as you said. It's either the
Yeah.
intake or the exhaust. You have
Yeah.
to look at the intake and exhaust, but what was the speed of your recovery and what was your accounting?
Yeah. And I think as leaders too, it's up to us to create that intake and exhaust, right? We
Yeah.
get to control how big that is or how it works or how it
Yes.
flows because, um, you know, it's on us as leaders and managers to make sure that our teams have the resources easily accessible, have everything at their fingertips to be able to access and move with velocity, not just speed, but move with velocity towards a goal, and not have to stop and wonder where things are. How do I do this? So there's a lot that goes into that, but
Mhm.
it's up to us to lay that groundwork from A to Z for them to be able to move at the speed of business and see and realize that success. So, Chad, I don't know what you think, man.
That's awesome.
The name of the show is Influence, and I'm listening to you. And let me go up the river a bit. Who
Yep.
influenced you, and
Mhm.
what did you get from that influence? The reason I say that is because it sounds like when you come in to work, you influence people and you influence the environment. So I was curious where yours came from and how it trickles down into your staff.
Look, it's easy for me to say my number one there, Chet, is my dad. He did exactly what I'm doing right now. I mean, heck, he worked half of my list for the first 2 years of my career, you know? I mean, I got to learn and I still learn a ton from him about not just the business, but dealing with people and things like that. Beyond my dad, who is a tremendous influence to me, the person who hired me, Ryan Rothstein, it has a tremendous impact on how I approach the business and how I approach management and leadership. He in wanting to empower me to make decisions when he was managing me as a salesperson. Hey, what do you think? And man, did I ever, that's the number one thing I learned from him is somebody comes in and says, hey, here's the situation. And it's just like a big plate of what do you want to do, boss? And it's no, what do you think? What do you want to do? And it might not always be whatever comes out of their mouth or whatever their proposed solution is, but I want to continue to challenge people to think critically. And look, I'm not always perfect at it. That's why I told you I reflect on the way home on Friday or on runs on the weekend on Saturday when I'm out crushing Juno. But it's did I say what do you want to do or what do you think enough this week to my people? So Ryan, Devin, obviously I've worked with in so many different capacities. He was my manager. I was a salesperson. We were managers together, and now I'm his local sales manager. He's the department head. So that's been an interesting one. One of my extreme mentors is Jim Stews from JDA Media, formerly Jim Doyle and Associates. He's had a tremendous impact on the way I approach life and work and being a leader. He's had a lot of kind of leadership vibes kind of influenced into me. So I think a combination of all those and others that I'm sure I'm forgetting to mention here, but just setting the tone and moving throughout the day. Chet, I think it reminds me, it's an Instagram reel, duh. But it was a rabbi talking about being the thermometer or the thermostat, and we make the decision
Hmm. Hmm.
every day to be the thermometer or the thermostat. and you can the thermometer is reactive and reacts to the condition and the temperature set in the room, but the thermostat sets the damn temperature. So
Exactly.
I saw that a couple months ago and I was like, yep, yep, that's going in the file.
That's intake and exhaust.
Yeah,
That's right. There you go.
I mean, insert metaphor here, but I mean, you all get it. It's
Yeah, good.
it's transfer of properties.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the business a little bit. I believe in threes. Everything I do is I ask in threes. Decisions you have to make moving forward, opportunities you see, and challenges that you overcome. And what's going on with the television business? It's not the same when I was in the radio business. And because I'm not in the business, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Look, I think business as a whole, Chet, is not fortunately for us in some of the other traditional medias, comparatively radio, newspaper. Those folks have certainly had their challenges, as do we, and they're working their way through them. I think the main thing I like to say, almost jovially, when approached with a similar objection about nobody watches TV, is nobody's peeling 65-inch TV screens off their wall in their living room. All right. So it's absolutely and admittedly the consumption is changing. And we talked about this before we went live, gentlemen, but we all didn't watch prime time the same last night. I was watching something on Apple TV. Chet, you were on ESPN Plus, and Terry was, watching a movie on Pluto or whatever. So that's always going to be in flux, the consumption mechanism. But what we feel we have a firm leg up on about the viability of our business moving forward is live local news, community engagement, and the importance of that will never go away. And then live sports and events. And from a viewership standpoint, we see increases in the mass reach and the ability to build repetition. From an advertising standpoint, that's kind of our approach. Is if we can find your target audience in a couple of newscasts where we can build repetition efficiently, and then we can combine that with a targeted digital approach, then that's a home run. And in 30, 60, 90 days, we're going to start crushing it and showing you better results through your advertising. But from a viewership standpoint, Chet, I think it's not that I interview young people all the time. It's not that they don't care about, they care about community. They advocacy marketing, what's going on in their community and their impact on their community, wherever that ends up being for them, is very, very high. So I think you start seeing this kind of over the last few years, and you'll see it moving forward is, local news stations have to do Instagram reels. They have to do TikTok. They have to be more engaged in these platforms that this younger generation is on, to insert themselves and then kind of, hey, come over here. You're going to age into this eventually, but I got to get to know you, and we have to build a relationship that's community engaged and oriented as you grow into it. So I think building those habits on those platforms that will again transfer into, maybe it transfers into a legitimate linear news viewer. But maybe it stays digital, and we certainly are in a prime position as an industry to capitalize on those.
That's good.
Who would you say is your major advertiser? What I've noticed is injury lawyers. I mean, every break back to back. But besides that, and because it's so cluttered, I don't know who do you think would be your major industry advertisers and why they would use television. That'd
Yeah,
be a great question.
in local marketing, Chet, you hit it on the head. Legal is a tremendous category, and this is station agnostic. This is just broadcast television now, but um, uh, legal, home improvement, medical, still automotive, but automotive certainly over the last 10 years has seen some tremendous peaks and valleys. So they're still important, very, very critical, but not as important as they were in the 90s, and professional services, home builders, like some of these kind of emerging categories. There's under medical, there's so many different sub umbrellas to that category, both in practice area and then underneath practice area, like, you could focus on lasers, you could focus on Mohs surgery, you could, all on four implants. There's so many subcategories to medical that it's crazy. But those are some of the leaders, and I think where they take advantage of us is you talk about competition, Chet. There are so many people that are fighting over share of wallet at the bottom of the funnel, right? Google pay-per-click, SEO, SEM, social media, website development, all these bottom of the funnel today customers mechanisms from an advertising and marketing standpoint. Where we bring value is know us before you need us. And I can show you that if you shift some of your budget or a portion of your budget to a middle of the funnel, top of the funnel strategy with a great idea and a sound strategy, I am going to bring you more organic and direct leads to your website that you can see and track. And we now have some really sophisticated attribution models on television and in digital. So I can show you that journey and how it works, where you focus a little bit more on the tomorrow customer, the next week customer. You certainly don't neglect the today customer, but the today customer is a little bit more price sensitive and a little bit more competitive with where they're going to choose to spend their money. But if you as a brand can get to know them before that point of entry happens, then boom, that's how you build preference, and that's how you can grow your local business through advertising and marketing.
That's good. Chet, final thoughts.
Do you, my final thought about the team is, do you do one-on-ones? And the reason I asked that is for a couple of reasons. You brought up the fact that there's a lot of categories, and I got to tell you that not one person can think of them. And if you have a group of them, and you also talked about medical. Yes, I've noticed that there's different layers of medical all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a team effort. Go, I never thought about that. Oh, that's a good one. We haven't done that one. And one-on-ones also let the salesperson that you're coaching know that you really care about them. Do I trust you? Do you care about me? Do you support me? Tell me about the importance of one-on-ones in your division.
I think we talked about this at our last lunch chat, but yeah, we'll get into it here a little bit before.
They weren't there at our lunch.
Yeah, no, I know that. Look, I'm a huge fan of them. I mean, obviously, they're mandated on our staff, and look, what I think about there is collaborative leadership. Okay, it's not dictating. Sometimes it could be, I guess, jokingly, but I want to collaborate with our folks in those settings and in our sales meetings and in our internal meetings. Adaptive training. Not one training schedule is going to fit every individual person. We talk about painting the fence one by one, or a broad swipe, but I think collaboration and ideation on how we can approach a prospect or a category, and really getting in it and meeting that salesperson at their level to try to figure out how you can best help them. So I think the collaboration there is huge in those one-on-one meetings. Now, Terry, to your earlier point, there has to be an accountability portion of that conversation about where we are, where we're going, and how we're getting there. But I always want to try to find ways to insert, well, what are you having trouble with? What do you think has great potential that you haven't gotten a hold of yet? Let's talk about what the approach and what we're doing to try to explore that. So I think that's where I go with that, Chet.
Well, that's great. They are lucky to have you. This has been an insightful conversation. Terry, any last comments?
No, Daniel, it's great to meet you, and we're Chet and I are both like entrenched in leadership and coaching and training, and it's so important to build people to become leaders.
Yeah.
People aren't born leaders. They learn how to lead. You may have a capacity to lead, but there's a difference between talent and skill. God gives us all talent and skills and discipline you put around to become great. So
Yeah.
we're skill set. We want you to identify your talent, but you got to do the skill. So
Yeah.
that's what
Well,
we're
listen,
about.
Terry, I think quickly, if you don't mind,
Sure.
I want to remind everybody listening that leadership is not found in a job title. Anybody could be a leader.
Yes.
And it's exercising those qualities. And then to use a sports metaphor is, as a leader, your greatest ability is your availability. Never be too busy to turn your chair around and engage with one of your salespeople and have that collaborative or coaching or feedback moment with them. Who needed your help out on the road that didn't get your help because you were doing a report that you couldn't set aside? Those are some of the things. And again, I'm not up here waving my finger saying I'm perfect. I'm not. I've probably missed a lot of those opportunities this month, but the ability to reflect on that and want to get better at that consistently, I think, is some of those behaviors that tie straight into, Terry, what you're talking about with leadership.
Yeah, it's good. Good stuff.
Danny, I need to cut that out and play it for all my clients. I repeat that over and over again. That is very, very strong.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being our guest today. Definitely appreciate it. This has been very insightful and powerful. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, yeah, Terry.
Terry, I'll see you at the next version of Influence Today. And if, by the way, if you like the show, please hit the stars and leave us comments and also share. You have to hit the share button. You just go click and it'll move on to somebody else. Thank you listening. Thank you for listening today to Influence Today with Chet Tart and Terry Lyles.